Awesome. So now we're about to cover the top 5 tips and tricks. Now, I didn't come up with all of these. Some of the other team members here at PairSoft came up with them. A big help from Sarah Spencer, who is the director of our implementations team. For those current customers that are on today's call, that name might sound familiar. She tries to be, hands-on with as many projects as she has time to be. She's one of DocuPeak's most tenured employees. And if you are a prospective customer of DocuPeak, if you come over, you will most certainly meet her and the folks that are under her team that will get your instance of DocuPeak set up. But a lot of team members helped out. Sarah was a big help in some of these tips, though. All right, so the first one, this was actually mine. So NetSuite defaults, and the reason why I like to bring this one up is because when I mainly work with new customers of PairSoft, people that are looking at DocuPeak for the first time, and I'll actually show these NetSuite defaults on some demonstrations. And I'm surprised, not a lot, but there are a few people, NetSuite users, that were unaware of these defaults. So I kind of like to point them out. Another reason why I like to point out these NetSuite defaults is because they do something very important. They keep NetSuite your record of truth, right? We're not trying to, I had to take a sip of water there. We're not trying to take away features or functionality away from NetSuite. What we're doing with DocuPeak is simply removing the manual steps in your AP process. But at the same time, again, with the importance of keeping NetSuite your record of truth. So a couple of examples of defaults are like the terms that you can find on the vendor section inside NetSuite. If you look at a vendor record or vendor master, you can find the terms field and also the default expense account, right? Now, you might be asking yourself, can't we use the OCR or optical character recognition to pull off some of that information, and especially like the terms? And you're right, we can do that. So this is DocuPeak inside my instance of NetSuite. I've clicked on the DocuPeak tab, and that's brought me to my AP inbox. So as the bills come in via email from your vendors or your team, or you scan them into a network scanner, your bills will appear here in the AP inbox. And then our tool, our optical character recognition, or OCR tool, will then begin to read off all the required information off the PDF. If I click on this first one here, Iron Horse Bicycles, if I click on the PDF icon there, that's going to open up the DocuPeak window, and it's going to allow me to process this bill. Okay. You can see that the OCR found things like the vendor name, the PO number, the invoice date, the invoice number, and some other information. I mentioned earlier that we take advantage of defaults where we can, and a popular one is terms. And if you're looking closely at the scan versus what's in my field here, you'll see that the vendor bill actually says net 30, where DocuPeak is saying net 60. And that's because we don't want to necessarily trust what's on the invoice, right? Vendors get things wrong all the time when they send you bills. If we had used our OCR to pull this information, which we can, we just recommend in most cases we don't, DocuPeak would have loaded up that net 30, and then it would have used the invoice date to come up with the due date, right? Making that 30 days out. But because we've already pre-negotiated with this vendor, if I go to the vendor record inside of NetSuite, and we go to the financials tab, letting NetSuite load there. Let's try that again. Well, when it lets me, my internet's a little slow right now, I guess. And Nicole, let me know if I'm lagging or anything like that. But we do have the financial tab there in NetSuite. And under that is the ability to set the default for terms and also a default expense account. Not sure why it's not pulling up for me right now, but apologies for there. But that's actually where we pulled that information. We did not use the OCR in this example to get that because, again, we didn't want to trust that the vendor got it right on the bill. So keep that in mind. Also, default expense account, that's another popular one, but really any kind of default, if there's any type of information, whether it's on the vendor record, the PO transaction, or somewhere else within NetSuite that you'd like to associate with the bill, we can do that with our native integration by setting that as a default inside of NetSuite. Cool. Let's go back to DocuPeak. All right, so that was the first tip. The second one is PO exception processing. So this was actually one that Sarah came up with. So for those current customers that are using DocuPeak, you know and you utilize purchase orders inside NetSuite, you know that's one of the things that we can really help out with and fully streamline. If a bill comes in, DocuPeak's going to help fully automate that 2- and 3-way match with the items there on the PO transaction. And if everything's perfect, technically nobody has to see that bill. If you'd like a one-person review, you can configure that. But the idea behind DocuPeak is we feel if it's already gone through the requisition process, it's already been approved. There's already been a PO. Technically, no one needs to see that. So again, DocuPeak is smart enough to know when there's no variance or discrepancy, everything matches up. It'll actually go straight through, create that bill transaction for you inside NetSuite, and then it's going to attach the document to that bill transaction, as well as update the PO and attach it there too. But there are variances and discrepancies that happen, and DocuPeak can help you out with that as well. We have a workflow tool that's built into DocuPeak where, depending on the variance or what's throwing it off, it goes to an individual on your team for review. But sometimes customers run into variances or discrepancies that are okay, that just happen. A perfect example is like sales tax and shipping. These are things that our users or requesters don't often know in the front end when they're requesting the purchase or the purchase order creation. So it's things that we're going to have to fill in on the when we actually get the bill and we know what that information is. Well, DocuPeak can help you there as well. So going back into my instance, pulling up this Iron Horse Bicycles invoice, you can see here we found the PO number. We matched it to what has been received inside NetSuite but not been billed. So that's how we do the matching, and then use other key pieces of information. But another thing that we can do is set a variance. So in this example, the reason this bill came to me is because there was a discrepancy, and it's because it didn't pick up the shipping. So you can see here the shipping is throwing off the amount versus the subtotal. Now, I did this on purpose to kind of demonstrate this, because this is common. What if this happens every time I receive a bill from this vendor? A quick way to help automate this even further and lower the clicks that it takes to process this bill is using thresholds. So if I go back into DocuPeak and I go to the administrative tab and I hit PO tolerance values, you can see here I have one for an example. So we do it by vendor, and then you can come in and set your tolerances either by percentage or amount. So in this case, if it's less than 5% off, it's good to go. Go ahead and process it, send it into NetSuite. Same with the amount, right? And then depending on what you do today, we can help automate that further. Maybe you tie that variance or discrepancy to an expense account. Maybe you blend it into the items. Whatever you need configured, we can accommodate. But this is a way that we can streamline those bills where it's okay if shipping or taxes are throwing it off. We can even use this information in the workflow tool. So if it's if it's not a complete match, but it's under 5%. Difference, it goes to Bill, right? Or someone else on the team. Whereas if it was over 5% different, if there was a difference of over 5%, it goes to Sally or something along those lines. So our workflow tool can be very flexible, and you can use these PO tolerances to catch things like this and then send it into another workflow. Awesome. So those are PO tolerances. And again, that came from Sarah Spencer herself. Next one on the list is coding templates. So again, I mentioned earlier, we have some prospective DocuPeak customers. We have some current DocuPeak customers on the line. This might be new even to you current customers that are on the call today. This is something that our team added maybe about 6 or 7 months ago, coding templates. So, even if you do heavily utilize purchase orders, you're still going to run into those utility bills that come in where there is no purchase order and you'll need to get those coded. Or maybe you're in a business that just doesn't require the need for purchase orders. So your process is to start with the bill. We can help you speed up that coding. So if I go back into the system here, let me find a bill that does not have a PO. I'm going to try to find a utility bill. There we go. There's an Airgas bill here. So this is an example of utility bill from Airgas. We can see the image that was scanned, all of the information that our optical character recognition pulled off, so I don't have to hand key that info. And because there was no purchase order, we're going to need to get this coded and sent off for approval. So if you're a current customer, you know that we have other kind of tricks and features to speed up this process, like the use previous button. There's a magic wand up here at the top. If I hit that, basically what it's doing is it's going into NetSuite, looking at the last bill that was created for this vendor, and then pulling over the expense account and coding to the different segments that was used the last time. So that's one way we can help. You can also add manually if you need to. It's very simple. You don't even have to remember everything about the expense account. Maybe it starts with a 6, go from there, and then you can tie it to other segments within your chart of account structure as needed. We also have import as well. My demo environment's not set up for it, but you've always had the ability to import a CSV file. So that was another way we could help with bills that required a lot of different expense accounts with a lot of different coding and allocation rules and all that, is that you can create a template. We actually provide that template during the setup process, and then you can import, again, that CSV file to fill out the coding. But the new feature that we added was the template. So right up here above the expense line, you can see template name. And it's really simple to use. To create a new template, you simply hit the checkbox, give it a name. You can see a couple here that I've already created. And then all you have to do is do the coding once manually. And then as soon as you submit and save this bill, you've just taught DocuPeak a new coding template that will appear there the next time around in your dropdown. So if I uncheck the new one and I hit the dropdown, you can see the two templates I've already created in my system. So I have the air gas one and I have the vendor A template there as well. If I select the air gas one, you can see there, it brought up the expense accounts. If I coded to any of the segments, it would have brought that up as well. And then the allocation. And this isn't too complicated. This is just 2 lines. To show you another example, I have another template in here for another vendor, but it'll give you an idea that it can, there's no limitations. It can load up as many different expense accounts and the coding to your different segments is needed, right? And if this concern is showing you this, it will not let a user process a bill where the expense subtotal does not match the amount that was pulled off the bill. So we mitigate errors in that way. All right. So going back to the list, that was coding, right? And then the next part to that would be workflow, right? Once you get a bill coded, you then need to get it approved, or going back to the purchase order conversation, if you find if DocuPeak detects a variance or discrepancy, we can then have it kicked off into a workflow to have people approve it. But the issue, and I'm sure this isn't a problem for anyone else that's listening to this call today, but some folks have told me that they have people that we jokingly refer to as repeat offenders. These are folks on your team that you rely on for approvals or to deal with discrepancies, and they just can't seem to get it done in a timely manner, right? Keeping true to the whole, automation and removing as much manual work as possible, DocuPeak can help you automate chasing down of approvers. And we do this through escalation emails that can go out and you can set up. So again, if you're a DocuPeak customer, you're probably familiar with the email alert system that we have. This is an example of an email alert. We have all types that can go out. Ones that let you know when there's an issue, maybe we got a bill, but there's no vendor that matches to it in NetSuite. The one that you're seeing on the screen here is a general email letting an approver know they have 4 bills waiting in their inbox to approve. They can see here the amounts. It kind of gives them some header information. If there was $1 million bill, I'd want to hop on that right away. If they are a NetSuite user, we have single sign-on with NetSuite, so they'd click that. You just be logged right back into NetSuite. And if they're not a NetSuite user, they can actually do their approvals outside of NetSuite or remotely by clicking here and then logging into a browser of their choice. But we also have escalation emails that go out, and we can configure those. So for example, say in 5 days, you haven't heard from your approver. They have not done their approvals, and these bills are still sitting in their inbox. We can send out an escalation email that not only goes to that person, but CCs somebody else. So maybe like a department head, a supervisor, a boss, or maybe somebody in accounting. We can even CC a whole department of folks, because the idea is that we want to get as many eyes on this bill as possible, so it's processed in a timely manner, and you're not having to chase down folks for approvers and stuff like that. Again, saving you more time and streamlining that process. On top of that, though, with DocuPeak, you get a lot of visibility into where your payables are. So it is nice to set up those escalation emails, but we definitely don't want to take any control away from you. And we want to provide complete visibility into where all of your payables are in the process. So we have things like this pending approval folder here. So if I click on that, what this is going to show me is a list or a folder of all the payables that I have out there waiting for approval. I can see who has them, when they received them, when's the last time they've updated them. I can even click on the image, the PDF there, and actually update. If I have access or the rights to do that, I can actually edit this bill while it's in process. And also using this folder, I can manage things behind the scenes. Maybe I have the ability to bypass a workflow and I want to skip Taylor. Or maybe Taylor, who's it's currently assigned to here, tells me that this bill is no longer under their project and it needs to go to someone else. I can actually reassign it from this screen as well. So I just select the bill, and then I can select the user I want it to go to and then hit submit, and you would see that change to Angela's name. We also have manual notification, which is nice. I talked about the email alerts. You can also bypass those with manual notifications. So say you're on the phone with Dell and they say you get a discount if you pay today, I can relay that information to my team member in real time through an email directly inside of DocuPeak. We also have this nice aging report as well. So this is handy. Mine's not too exciting because I don't actually have approvers that process payables in my demo environment. But if I did, I would see numbers here in these columns. Maybe I'd see a 4 here. And that's letting me know that Amy has 4 bills that have been sitting in her inbox for 1 to 7 days. Right. This side of the screen wouldn't scare me too much, but this side of the screen would give me some concern. So you can click into those, send out those manual notifications. And again, the idea here is just to give you more visibility. You know, maybe if you saw a user that kept getting bills on this side of the screen, you'd want to set up those escalation emails to make sure they're processing them in a more timely manner. Great. And then the 5th one here, again, this one came from Sarah, payment information. So what DocuPeak is doing is we're really automating the front end piece to your payables process, and we're queuing that bill up to be paid. However you make that payment, we don't interfere with that. That's another side to NetSuite's technology. So, you know, whether you're doing that directly out or using some other solution, we're not going to interfere with any kind of integration or anything like that. Because again, we're automating the bill transaction creation for you and removing the work from that piece. But once the payment is made inside NetSuite, we can actually bring that information over and associate it with the bill. That's not, you know, such an exciting thing if you're a NetSuite user, because if you're a NetSuite user, you can use global search to see that. But where it becomes important is your non-NetSuite users. So what I'm going to do is show you what DocuPeak looks like outside of NetSuite, which is what I just did. So now I'm no longer in NetSuite, I'm in the DocuPeak portal. And if I come to the AP search, and again, we can give your approvers access to DocuPeak outside of NetSuite. We can also limit what they can see and do. So keep in mind, this is full admin access. An approver wouldn't necessarily see all of this information. But I can come here to the search section within DocuPeak, and we can see these columns for payment date and check number. So again, this is a demo environment. I don't actually have users that process payments in my environment, but if I did, I would see the payment or check/reference number applied here. And this is great because if you have folks that are calling you or those quick emails, like, hey, real quick, I got a call from the vendor. When did we pay this bill? Those folks aren't going to have to take up your time anymore. They're going to be able to see this information on their own, pull up that. And then even if you allow them to send emails out to the vendors with this information. So again, all if you'd like them to. So again, that was something Sarah Spencer pointed out, that we can bring over that payment information. And that's, again, helpful, especially for your non-NetSuite users. They can see that information. And then I think we had a bonus one. We told you we're going to give you 5. We're going to give you 1 more. So we do have an honorable mention, and this is saved searches. So I just showed you a little bit of our search tool. It actually can be used as a report builder as well in a way. So kind of going back into the search section here, if you hit the search bar, this will take you to the search. I already have a search here that I created earlier. Let me clear that out. Again, you'll always have the global search up here. We don't take anything away from NetSuite. What we're doing with the DocuPeak search is just honing in on your payables only. So if you just need to see payable information, this might be a better place to find it within NetSuite or outside of NetSuite. You can see things that are pending approval. That means they're still in DocuPeak being processed. And if you see it say NetSuite, that means that's a completed transaction. That's a bill transaction inside NetSuite. You can bring up the document. You can see the indexing that took place, the coding, the audit trail, the discussion trail. You can see all of that information. Again, you can see this in and out of NetSuite. And to use our search, it's pretty simple. It's based off a filter and value system. So I could come here and say, I want to see all of my Dell bills. And let me see a certain amount, right? That's usually a common one that'll work. 500, that in there, and hit search. And then it'll bring up the bills that meet that criteria. And then from here, I can print, I can export to Excel, I can send in an email. And if this is something you need to bring up more commonly, say that you need to put a date range to this search for the previous quarter, and you're always going to need this report in a way, you can actually save these searches and then access them in your folder here or your reporting section up at the top. And then you don't have to start from scratch when you're building them out. And then again, you can email these out to whoever needs the information. So that is the search tool. And that's it for today. So that's pretty much everything I wanted to cover. It looks like we have about 5 minutes left for Q&A. So Nicole,
we have lots of questions coming your way, Clegg.
Awesome.
All right, first one. Can the coding templates be saved by any approver or just someone with admin access?
Whatever right you'd like. So it's kind of up to you on that. So the answer is everybody or a limited few, whatever you prefer.
Perfect. If their DocuPeak doesn't have the templates field showing, is there something they need to turn that function on? Something they need to do?
Yes, I would recommend, of course, my contact information is on the invite, so feel free to reach out to me and I'll get you the right folks here on the DocuPeak PairSoft side. But your customer success manager or your account manager would be a good place to start to learn more about adding that field.
Perfect. How do I get coding templates? We use account default in NS, but DP has never pulled in those account numbers.
Interesting. So that might be something we need to connect. There is, and for those folks that are new to DocuPeak, there is an implementation that needs to take place. I know it kind of looks like something you would just flip a switch and it's active, but there is some work that we do for you to get it set up. That could have been a piece that, during your initial setup was not covered. So again, I'd recommend reaching out to either me, if you have contact with your customer success manager or account manager, and they can make sure that field is going to be linked up for you.
Perfect. Will the OCR technology ever capture the amount and tax type for non-PO invoices, or is something that always needs to be input manually?
It depends on how your OCR was configured. Our OCR can pull a lot of information, but like I was mentioning before, like terms is often like a recommended. We'll have a customer say, "Can you pull terms?" But we'll recommend against it. If you do have some information like tax or shipping that you'd like the OCR to cover, that is something that we've done with customers in the past. It's a configuration option. So again, kind of same question. Reach out to your dedicated DocuPeak resource here at PairSoft or to myself, and we can start the conversation on what it will look like to get that set up for you.
Perfect. Is there a way to update the period date after month end? For example, pending receipts folder, we're waiting on a PO to be received on to process an invoice. The invoice is from February, but it's now March 1st. Is there a way to change all those period dates in March at one time instead of opening each one?
So there could be, but where we would run into some limitations is how is that done in NetSuite outside of DocuPeak, and what limitations you have inside NetSuite, because DocuPeak will never break NetSuite rules. We'll never override them. So it'll always get rejected if it tries to go into NetSuite from there. So is it possible? Yes, I have customers that do that. I even have customers that have a drop down. Where we have like posting period fields that they can change in the DocuPeak window, and then that information will flow into NetSuite. But for me to directly answer that for you, the person that's asking that specifically, I would need to know a little bit more about how your NetSuite instance is set up. So,
okay. Can we set multiple approvers if bill is over a certain amount? So all bills over 5K need 2 approvers, etc.
Yeah. So there's multiple tiers within DocuPeak. There's really no limitation to that. I'm not sure if I showed it in my demo there, but standard is 3. My demo environment has 3 tiers of approval, but we can definitely do more or less. And it can be done by vendor. Workflows can be set up by vendor. So you could have X amount of users based off all sorts of different rules and rights, bringing people in and out of the workflow. But yeah, to answer your question, if you need 2 and they both need to see it at the same time or something along those lines, yes, we can most certainly do that.
Perfect. And then just to save time, these are some awesome questions. I'm just going to hit one more. What does the pricing? How does the pricing work for this product?
Yeah. So it's off of a tiered structure. So what we look at is your annual invoice or vendor bill volume. And when we say invoice, we mean invoice. It could be 5 pages, but that's just one invoice to us. So we look at that annual volume, and then you would fall into a specific tier, and then that tier has an annual subscription associated with it. So if anybody's interested in pricing, please feel free to reach out. And once I know your annual volume, I can answer that question for you. Also, too, this was a quick presentation today, definitely high level. If you'd like to see a more in-depth, again, reach out to your dedicated resources here at PairSoft or myself. I'll be more than happy to set up a demonstration just like one-on-one for you and your team, and we can get into the details as far as you'd like.